Today. My warmest thanks to my friend and esteemed colleague Esra, as well as students and colleagues from Ishmael today for your generous invitation. I do hope that we can have a further conversation about our shared commitment and fascination for the stories that design, its practice and histories tell us. But first, I promise to tell you a tale of two tables, which I hope to capture how attention to cultural memories of how furnishing was experienced sensorially in the past can enrich the more esteemed scholarly practices of quantitative and qualitative research. Our first story is a dark fable of how metal and glass of a table bewitched modernist design to serve fascist rituals. Our second tale leads us to a fairy kingdom where a billiard table casts a spell over women and children, giving the power to play the games of gentlemen. Now, as Esra has indicated, parts of this story form the basis of a volume that I was honored to create with a wonderful set of colleagues across multiple institutions. My friend Trevor rose to the challenges of assessing design and motifs in modern practices. Tony explored the materials and methods of making. Marjan, who sadly has now died, restituted furniture typologies amidst contemporary transnational and spatial mores. The great Penny Sparke assessed the impact of shifting private space and identity upon furnishing. Helena assessed the responses to public destinations of furniture. And Greg Voltolato explored the furnishing impulses shelter as a manifestation of the intersections of design and furniture and transport design. I relished the opportunity to consider furnishings dissemination through exhibitions and display, while Clive examined the diversity of visual representations which encourage consumption. Oh, sorry, that's Greg's chapter, that's Clive. Anya spoke to the role of oral and textual representations. Our efforts were directed towards creating a framework for budding design historians such as yourselves, eager to find tools to investigate how furnishing embodies the arresting traces of modern historical experience. The role of furnishing in the projection of national identity and political ideology in the 20th century would take on... Oh, we have someone's microphone needs muting. Helena,
okay.
Please, thank you.
We have solved it.
Not at all.
Sorry.
Not at all. So the role of furnishing in the projection of national identity and political ideology in the 20th century would take on particular acuity amidst the pressures of economic depression and global conflict, a time not so different from that in which we sadly are entering today. As the program of a 1940 Museum of Art competition for organic furniture design recognized, as Europe was plunging into yet another world war, and I put the quotation on the screen, economics and politics and the fate of nations in war and peace are all affected by the vast recent changes in the equipment of man. The forms of our furniture should be determined by our way of life. Fascist regimes seized upon spectacular displays to enhance the persuasiveness of their ideology. Both Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler embraced modernist classical idioms to furnish their regimes new architecture, be it sports grounds, government bureaucratic buildings, or official residences. Through elaborate temporary installations, such as the notorious juxtaposition of the Nazi and Soviet pavilions at the 1937 Paris exhibition, modern commodities, including furniture, articulated the cultural credentials of brutal, oppressive fascist regimes. An Italian fascist variation of the elegant tubular furniture, typically associated with the utopian politics and aesthetics of the Bauhaus school, proved equally effective in bridging tensions between the assertion of total state authority and the seduction of a mass public through consumer opportunities promulgated by the regime. It's worth remembering in the 1930s, the whole world had been experiencing an economic depression, so commodity goods are a very seductive political tool. The constraints of autarky, i.e. that Italy was not allowed to trade with outside world, sanctions were imposed on Mussolini's Italy by the League of Nations after Mussolini invaded Abyssinia, meant that this bauxite-rich region celebrated aluminium as a particularly attractive material through which to imagine a shiny, modern, industrial future, a new fascist empire. Both luxury, modernist furnishing and more attainable standardized designs were employed in the Italian housing and interior design exhibitions of 1933 and 1936, exemplifying the regime's astute determination to encompass rival constituencies. As Schumacher and Rifkin have argued, the furnishings designed by the great modernist architect Giuseppe Terragni for the offices of the meeting rooms of the Casa del Fascio between 1932 and 36, the party headquarters in Como, embodied the contradictory ideological association of styles, materials, and space at the heart of Italian fascism. This spectacular modernist building, created by Terragni, positioned fascist party users within a didactic environment, seeking to reconcile the regime's ideological fiction of a collective dictatorship. Terragni and his artist colleague, Mario Radice, negotiated these geopolitical problematics through their design solutions, which integrated the regime's rival obsessions with ancient imperial culture, devotional practices of Catholicism, and technological futures. The transparency of the building's glass wall and fenestration fostered the illusion of openness and belonging, immersing the crowd, the party, and the leader into a universal futurist energy resonant in Mussolini's text, the 1932 Doctrine of Fascism, which Terragni and Radice literally inscribed into the marble of the building's exterior. Now, this architectural journal, Quadrante, in 1935, provides a unique visual and textual primary evidence about its furnishing in this Como building. The director's conference room brought modernity and craft skill together to demonstrate the technical miracles of a conference room table. A 1 centimeter thick crystal glass top encased in a rosewood frame held niches with fascist relics of different moments of the regime's rise to power. It was surrounded by a gilded 7-meter chromed white copper tubular substructure. Integrated into the wall directly opposite the director's table, where you never positioned a chair, Mussolini is appearing in a photo montage. So imagine every time you sat down for a committee meeting, you literally had the leader staring down at you as if he were at the table, symbolically present, actively in control of your meeting. In his article in this journal, Quadrante, Terragni championed modern Italian artisans who made windows, this table, the chairs of the Casa del Fascio as a microcosm of the fascist collective under autarky. He rejoices in the unexpected and glorious event, the war in Africa and consequent economic siege, meaning he relied solely upon local workmen to create, and I quote, the incredible crystal which the table's surface in the director's salon embodies. Having, and again, quote, asked for materials in dimensions or thicknesses that would have tried the best and most organized foreign industries, Terragni affirms how the materiality of making and furnishing connect the artisan, the crowd, and Mussolini himself. And I'm just giving you here the quotation from Terragni. The moving quality of the work is no longer the rhetorical figure with a spade or a pick on his shoulder. It resides rather in acknowledging the thousands and thousands of black-shirted citizens amassed in front of the Casa del Fascio to hear the voice of their leader announce to Italians and foreigners the advent of empire. It is the throng where a fellow smiling indicates to his comrades that particular window or slab of marble, and surely he is confiding with simplicity and satisfaction that he too worked there, and the Casa del Fascio, if only in small part, is to his credit too. So the physical integration of the state and the individual in the Casa del Fascio and its interiors was expressed in the interaction required by furniture. The intrinsic subjugation of the individual to the authority was expressed through the hierarchical taxonomy of furnishing and the functions of distinct spaces. The authority of the leader and the dissemination of his ideology through party officials in this conference room was signaled in the naming of the chair, the Benito chair that you see on the left, invoking Benito Mussolini. Its luxurious green leather upholstery referenced historical traditions of elite seating types, but the metal substructure reconfigures the experience of sitting on the chair to the demands of fascism. The mass and scale of the Benito Club chair, if you can see in the photograph, you would always have been sort of beneath and overwhelmed by the table, as well as the photo montage of Mussolini. Look at the height of the chair in relationship to the footrest and the table. You're always subjugated physically by the relationship there. Equally, both the Benito chair and the Lariana, which you see on the right, which is the sort of cheaper office staff version, require you to sit in a constant state of tension. There is no point at which your lower back is supported. And Benito Mussolini and Terragni both argue that this is a kind of fascist, physically alert posture. So furniture actually imposes on the physical body a way of sitting, a way of being. So a slight shift of mood The power of furnishing to capture evocative traces of the relationship between the individual and the society in this dystopian table can also tell a more playful fairy tale. So this is our second table, a billiard table in the Villa La Sapinière, which also embodies creative partnerships between designers and patrons and style, revealing debates at the dawn of the 20th century about how important it is to contextualize furniture within cultural history. The table sits amidst a symphony of white and gold neo-Rococo decoration, what German critics called Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art, championed by Art Nouveau designers and purchased by an affluent transnational clientele beyond traditional aristocratic circles. So you have a new set of consumers here. These are no longer only kings and state officials. These are a sort of upper middle class set of buyers as well. The interior balances upon this stylistic moment of 1900, where Rococo revival as well as new technologies collaborate to create a modernist vocabulary that we know better in the following decade. The design of the billiard room is the work of multiple craftsmen, but in particular, three artist designers. Felix Brachmann devised the ornament in sculpted wood and silk embroidery. The furniture was designed by Alexandre Charpentier, and the murals and ceilings were painted by Jules Chéret, who is better known for his poster work and his friendship with Toulouse-Lautrec. All of these were created in collaboration with the Vita family who inhabited this house, as I hope to persuade you. The so-called bijou, small-scale, 8-foot billiard table, billiard tables were often a little bit larger than this, as we'll see in a moment, was the focal point of the interior's decoration program. Wood, slate, marble, cloth, gilded bronze, and paint testify to this network of designers, craft people, patrons, and critics to show how modern furniture was very much also the product of use as well as production. The billiard room furnishings were widely disseminated through exhibitions. They were shipped all around the world and shown in the kind of international fairs that we've been talking about so far. But they were also communicated through print publications such as this one, a pamphlet issued in a sort of luxury format by the Gazette des Beaux-Arts that was written by a museum inspector and critic, Roger Marx. Now, in this beautiful pamphlet, he argued that furniture could create a new social art, which would create a new modern age, where designers and patrons financed prototypes that could then be mass disseminated to a whole new set of publics lower down the social scale. So the artful interior design photography of this 1902 illustration shows the way in which these billiard tables were communicated in a sort of ideal form. And part of what I want to persuade you of is that we as historians need to reinsert the players, the users of this furniture, into these absent photographs, these absent rooms. So to reintroduce the animation of domestic leisure that was the purpose of this object of play, let's maybe look at the family that commissioned this object and where we might find them as design historians. We could look in public record offices, private correspondences, oral histories. Examining the history of billiard furniture and its role in this very sociable game can also help to repopulate a photograph like this one. The creative exchanges between the three artist designers you've met and this gentleman and his wife, Baron Joseph Raphael Vita, are well documented in secondary scholarship about the billiard room. But to capture who actually used this billiard table, which was seemingly the center of the Baron's play and pleasure, one may need to think about how difficult it is often to recapture the historical experience of the women of the Vita family. Glimpses of the lives of Baroness Helena Vita, her daughter Fanny Foa, and indeed this woman painted by Chere, Malvina Blequet, who was a sort of working class dancing girl from Montmartre, originally the unmarried companion of the Baron Vita, later his wife, really is only discernible through private correspondence and things like birth and marriage certificates. So I think it's really important as a historian to try all these other research tools of looking at things like the marriage certificate of Fanny Vita to Edward Foa, the international explorer, that we see on the far right-hand side, represented on the cover of a popular geographical magazine. And indeed, the fact that the deeds to the villa in Evian shows that the Baroness Helen Vita gave the villa not to Joseph, but to Fanny. There was a matrilineal line. So this billiard table is part of a house owned by the women of the family. And indeed, the fact that the primary residents of this household were Helen and Fanny rather changes how we might think this table was used. If we looked at these ornamental features of the billiard room only as if we were the Baron, the tactility of these nudes and draped female figures by Charpentier on the door plates and the side features of the billiard table itself might feel just uncomfortably titillating. They're here to encourage male desire. But if we think about the fact that this room was next door to a sculpture studio made for Fanny, who also sculpted female nudes, and that she was a sculptor in her own right, changes the sense of agency of the presence of these female figures. This is a space where both men and women played billiards, touched these features. It is not just about erotic male fantasy. It is a place of communal authorship, ownership, and play. Chere's murals and ceiling paintings, which represent this theatrical world of Montmartre, is directly paying homage to Malvina Vita, this companion, later wife of the Baron, who might well have felt socially vulnerable as a dancing girl in the elite circles of Evian. Instead, there is this room where the world where they met is rejoiced in and celebrated as a space of play and delight. Furthermore, we might want to examine how billiards have been represented historically through photographs, popular illustration, and painting. Here we're confronted with the sort of received wisdom about the game of billiards. It is usually conceived of as an exclusively male leisure activity, either in, as you see in the top left, elite gentlemen's clubs, or at the bottom left in proletarian pool halls. And here I'm showing you both a transgender champion and a set of African-American working class players. But it was also an activity that women very much participated in. And this is something that I think most of us have been unaware of. And this is where the historian storytelling comes into play. If we look at this frontispiece to a volume entitled Billiards for Everyone by Charles Vivid Roberts, who was a famous billiard player champion, he stands clasping the copy of the book itself, but what he's looking at is a woman player with her cue accurately poised beside a ball on a mahogany table of the type typically associated with pool halls and billiard rooms in gentlemen's clubs. This photograph represents the aspirations expressed in Charles Roberts' opening to the book. This book is written for all, as the title indicates, and I hope that numerous lady cueists, i.e. billiard players, will benefit from my instruction. So the temptation to equate the sort of feminine rococo decoration of the billiard room in the Villa La Sapinière with male desire loses sight of the fact that respectable virtues were attributed to billiard playing for women as much as men. Billiards was a family pastime undertaken in reputable public space as well as elegant homes. And I'm just showing you here the game of billiards on the left of 1807 by Louis-Léopold Boilly, a wonderful French painter of that early empire period of Napoleon, where mixed play by men, women, and children was a family respectable recreation. Full with sort of romantic encounters, but also good, wholesome fun, as it were. On the right, we see a painting from the 1860s by the Napoleon III. The first is an image for Napoleon I's reign. The second is an image from Napoleon III's reign in France, where the court portraitist, Charles-Édouard Boutibon, again shows women in a respectable bourgeois interior playing together with children at their side. There were even popular plays. This is a pantomime that was very much celebrated around 1900, again, the moment of our table's creation, which in the publicity photograph shows a cross-dressing actress as a curate playing billiards with an elegant lady of the household in her dressing gown. The fact that an aristocratic British gentlewoman, Georgina Louise Berkeley, has a whole set of drawings in watercolor and pencil showing women's play and even a little dog seated on the table shows the degree to which billiard rooms were very much inhabited by women, children, even pet dogs. So the Vita's furnishing of their villa and their billiard room was very much a feminine as well as a masculine space. Another research tool for the historian is to look at advice manuals and popular journals about billiards, who talk at great length about the virtues of billiard play. These 19th century sources aligned intellectual as well as physical benefits to the game of billiards. Hirschler associates this noble game not only with the antique heroic pursuit of gymnastics, or indeed medieval jousting, but also a sort of, and I'm quoting here, philosophical dissertation. Each play requires thought, reflection, reasoning. We even have here an epic poem by one Lalanne, which invokes the King of France, Francois Ier, and Louis XIV, who played this king of games, suggesting elevated ancestry in classical epic poetry. In the introductory chapter to Michael Phelan's history of the game, some account of the origins of billiards and an appeal to the wives and sisters of America in its favor, this Irish player and historian of the game argues that Shakespeare was a billiard player. Cleopatra, Mary Queen of Scots, and Madame de Stael all embraced billiards. And I've given you a citation on the slide. The late Duchesse de Berry was also very fond of the game and highly skilled in its execution. Her example gave the tone to Parisian fashion. Today, the billiard room is regarded as an indispensable adjunction to every chateau of any pretension on continental Europe. This other author I mentioned, Hirschler, who wrote Billiards in the 19th Century, extends his praise of the intellectual and physical benefits of the game to women. Women of good society in France, as in foreign lands, find pleasure and an agreeable distraction in billiards. Its gentleness is revealed in the curvaceous grace of their movement. Let us avow in a whisper that a woman playing billiards is an adorable creature. So the beautification of the home and the body is championed across poetry, popular advice and literature, even this kind of magazine, The Billiard Player of 1903, which counted billiards was necessary exercise, encouraging graceful carriage. So the purchase of a billiard table for the home benefited all the family, providing a domesticating influence on the head of house, the gentleman, such as the Baron Vita, but also Helena and Fanny Vita and their children took part. The enhancement of social status, merit and affordability of acquiring a piano is often frequently compared to the purchasing of a billiard table. This luxury furniture identifies, and I quote, the proprietors of the house as intelligent, educated, and up-to-date. Billiard tables are created by artists, not workmen. And I'm just showing you here one purveyor of billiard tables from the city in which my husband works and I live together, Bristol. And notice that J.W. Smart, housed on College Green, which is in the center of our city, is exporting these objects worldwide. And I've alerted you there. It's celebrating both the local artisanship. The West Country was known for its skilled in cloth making as well as in furniture design. So we're celebrating West Country fabrics. Bristol is in the West Country of England. Okay. But it also celebrates suitable climates and the export of these tables to China. So we have an extraordinarily diverse set of consumers for these objects. Bijou tables, so this smaller scale that we see in the villa in Evian were marketed as a sort of adaptable was lost. That these are things that need to be discerned through documents, through oral histories of the type that we've just been exploring. So by way of conclusion, I just have a couple of further slides meditating on the role of furniture in the projection of identity and politics. I don't know if any of you have seen or read the novel by Chuck Palahniuk, Fight Club, but those of you who know of IKEA Boy, the protagonist of that sort of dystopian novel and film, recognizes that he's become obsessed with IKEA furniture. I'd flip through catalogs and wonder which dining table defines me as a person. I loved every stick of furniture. That was my whole life. Everything, the lamps, the chairs, the rugs were me. It was me that was blown up. So furniture projects our sense of self. Researching the complex stories of furniture's selection, design, and use demonstrates that style is very much transformed by use. Modernist furniture could be appropriated by fascist regimes as well as used for the utopian encouragement of creativity, as witnessed by the Gerrit Rietveld adaptable bed and chair that you see on the left. Equally, the Rococo that I've been celebrating in the billiard room is just as readily appropriable to oppressive regimes at the current moment. But I thought we might end with a slightly more cheerful little fairy tale. And this is actually looking at a set of chairs and storytelling. At the 1967 Montreal exhibition, Man and His World, Australia created a pavilion which they named the Spirit of Adventure. It was surrounded by gardens in which kangaroos were displayed, and inside you had wonderful juxtapositions of Aboriginal bark paintings, the Great Barrier Reef, as well as wondrous new technologies that Australia wanted to promote across the world. One of the key furniture elements of this display was a set of chairs, which housed extraordinarily up-to-the-minute technologies, a sound system created by Rolag and Company, an Australian firm, which, as you sat down on each of these chairs, would activate Australian voices telling you stories about that landmass, its people, its flora. What I hope to have persuaded you of is that furniture can operate as a hugely powerful societal tool. You, as designers and historians, have magic in the stories that you tell through your creative practice. Be careful who you share your spells with, because they can be incantated to very different ends. The different languages of styles can be redeployed in multiple ways to multiple purposes. So thank you for listening to my tale and for sharing in these reflections further.
Thank you very much, Claire. It's been a very inspiring talk. Yes, I congratulate you about your paper and your presentation. It's been very inspiring for us and thoughtful again. So do you have any questions or comments? Can we look at the audience now? And our students, thank you. Appreciate your talk.
Oh, that's very kind. And I apologize for the slightly distorted. It was snowing when I started the talk here. It's now sunny. So my light dynamics have changed. I think
Yes.
Didem has a question.
Yes, Didem, please. Thank you very much for joining us. Didem is a very valuable colleague of mine also.
Thanks for invitation. We have a great, presentation today. Thank you, Claire, so much. I have just a little comment about the billiards that reminded me at the turn of the century in Izmir, billiards was so popular before the Great Fire and the population exchange, and all the Jewish, Armenian, Orthodox Greek, and Turks, and also the travelers, as you know, it's the port city, gathered around the billiard table and played billiards. That's also reminded me, maybe you want to look at later.
Absolutely. But part of why I was so excited that Esra asked to let me join in the conversation with you all was I would love to know more about that. This is a sort of start of a voyage in a way, and I would love to reflect more on how billiards and the furniture in their use operated in different countries in different moments in history. So you've inspired me to think more about how that operated in Izmir. Thank you so much, Didem.
Thank you so much.
That's great. No, and I think in a way that's what's exciting. We often think of billiards as being a private game.
In the public spaces they play.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that it affords an opportunity, or at least in an English context, billiards, I think, is often seen as something that's about elite, exclusionary spaces. This is where government ministers and aristocrats decide our futures over a game of billiards with